Call this meeting to order. We're here to discuss with Stimson Lumber about a legacy conservation easement that they've been involved in. I will let one of you guys take over and tell us all about it in our audience.
All right. I'll start and then I'm going to hand it over to these guys. My name is Eric Brubaker. I'm with the Trust for Public Land. We are celebrating a 50th anniversary this year. We're a national nonprofit that does parks conservation work at all different scales across the country. We're a little different from similar nonprofits that you might be familiar with, like the Nature Conservancy and so forth, because our MO is land for people, and it's largely one of the reasons that we got involved with partners like Stimson that do large-scale conservation work where there's an element of public access. And that's what makes this program extremely appealing to the Trust for Public Land. And we've been doing this kind of work for a long time out of Sandpoint, Idaho. But I work remotely, basically an arm of the Northern Rockies office in Bozeman. We've been partners with Barry and Stimson for a number of years, working in a lot of projects in western Montana, and now we have more and more in Idaho, so my position is relatively new as kind of the Idaho rep.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Barry. And
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. A little bit about Stimson Lumber Company. We are a family-owned forest products company. We own timberland and mills in Oregon and Idaho. We also own some land in Montana and in eastern Washington. Company's been in business since the 1850s, so steeped in history. And we grow trees and we mill lumber, and that's the main thing that we do. Across what we call the Intermountain region, which is western Montana, North Idaho, and eastern Washington, we own about 420,000 acres. And in Idaho, we own 165,000. It's been a pleasure for Stimson to be in this region for about 25 years. And our roots really started in the Lake States, and then they ended up moving to the West Coast, Seattle area, and then into the Redwoods in Northern California. And then really our base of operations in Oregon now is west of Portland, where we've got mills and timberland. We have found it increasingly more difficult to be owners of timberland just because of valuations. So values are coming up on land, and there's a lot of people moving into our area. Mm-hmm. And so we get regular phone calls, and when I say regular, like weekly phone calls about selling property. And for our owners, it would be much more attractive to sell the land than to just continue to own it and manage it for timberland. But that's our heritage, and we really feel it's important that we maintain these lands as working for us for the long term. And so what a forest legacy conservation easement allows us to do is it allows us basically to strip the development rights out of property and then to be able to maintain it just as timberland for the long term. We continue to pay timber taxes to the counties, as always, but we are not allowed at that point then to develop the properties or sell it for development. So it allows us then to focus on our core business, which is growing trees on these lands to service our mills. So I think you're probably familiar with our mills. We've got 3 of them. One's in Plummer, one's in St. Mary's, and one's in Priest River. So we've got 3 mills, employ 400-ish people in Idaho, and then we own around 15,000 acres in Shoshone County, and we're looking to put 11,000 of it under this large conservation easement. Talk a little bit about the easement. So it's under the infrastructure bill that was put into place a year ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half, can't remember now. There's the ability to put large landscape conservation projects forward. So we're looking to put the remainder of our land in Montana, most of our lands in eastern Washington, and about half of our lands in Idaho into a large easement. And so that's what we wanted to come here to tell you about, show you the lands that we're going to put
Okay.
under easement. We've got some maps here, Tyler has, and I'll introduce Tyler Madison's our real estate manager for Stimson. And Britt Madison, yes, they're related.
Yeah, we're
father and son. Britt is our Idaho land manager. And I say our, I used to work with Stimson. I'm now retired, but I'm a consultant. And my primary job is to oversee this conservation easement for Stimson.
Okay.
So that's showing the southern portion, or I guess the northern, southern. So that's most of Shoshone County, and then that other one I just passed out is all of Idaho that's going
Okay.
under. Actually, that's northern.
And the red lands on the map are lands that Stimson owns that will be going under conservation.
Here we go. Too many maps.
And we currently have one that's in process right now. It's called the Selkirk.
So
And
that
that's
shows all
modern
3
boundaries.
states.
Okay.
And that's about 10,000, a little over 10,000 acres that should wrap up at the end of the year. And then we have about 14,000 that's already under conservation in Idaho, which is modern boundary county.
Okay. Well, it's pretty exciting because you're saving the land for the future and you're using it for the purpose of what it's, for lumber.
Mhm.
And I think that's important that we, I'm glad that you guys have done this. It's really a benefit to people for sure because, a lot of people are selling their lands out and, just like farming right now, the farm ground's all going and, pretty soon the timber ground. And this is really something that you guys have wanted to save the heritage of the land like that for timber. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for that. We feel the same way. Just some facts and figures, roughly 2/3 of the log sourcing for mills in Idaho come from private lands. And the other third comes from state and federal. So you can tell how important private lands are to the milling industry in the state. And so, another benefit of putting these lands under easement is they will always, the deed restriction on a conservation easement requires that they stay as working forts. And that's perpetual. So, conservation easement is a forever thing. And they're pretty hard to get out of. And we've never tried to, nor do we want to. Obviously, we're going this route to preserve these lands for forestry and timber.
Okay.
And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. It sounds like a great big scary thing. It's really not. It's pretty simple, and it's just maintaining jobs, maintaining forests for timber, and it's important to have a solid base, as I'm sure you're well aware, for our communities to have employment. There's a lot of tourism, a lot of people moving in, but it's still really important to have a base of industry, and the timber industry is very important in Idaho.
Yes.
And it has been. That's, we've got the mills in St. Mary's and without land, without timber, that takes that away. So it is an important part of our heritage here too.
And then one of the things we're looking at, there's a lot of ancillary benefits too that people don't think about sometimes, but particularly the state trust lands are really dependent on these mills being operational within a region to have viable timber sales, and those come back directly to our schools. And you start looking around the ecosystem of the industry, and there's a ton of benefits, whether it's recreation, which is kind of the angle we take, but
Yep.
outside of that, the economy.
Yeah, it would if we sold off all the private timberland. You said that 2/3 of it comes from the private industry. If we did that, we probably couldn't keep the mills open enough to even get the state to
That's right.
run timber through.
Have any trees left like we're seeing in some areas? They just scalp it.
Mm.
I don't understand.
Well, I understand some of our cuts, a lot of it, and I know where you're referring to, but, a lot of those, we did uneven age management for a year, and a lot of people still do that. And the problem with that is you're relying on natural regeneration to come back. And with all the diseases and insects we get, and the droughts we're having here lately, it's affecting different species. which is attracting more of the root rots and more of the diseases. And so some of these areas we're going into, the best thing you do is start them over.
Okay.
And in Idaho, it's called the forest practices rules. And so you have within 2 years to plant your lands back into seedlings, or you rely on natural regeneration. And so after a certain time period, you got to show you have so many trees per acre. Well, in this case, where we're going in and harvesting the lands up, getting them back into production, we went from 300,000 trees in 2013 when I first came up. We're planting 3.2 million this year.
Okay.
And so we're rehabbing a lot of our lands, getting it back into good production quicker.
Mhm.
You know, if you rely on natural regeneration, it can take you 5 years to get a tree that's 6 inches.
Yeah.
We're starting out with a 6-inch tree. Within 2 years, after that 5th year, we've already got trees that are like 30 to 40 inches tall. And so,
And that's good for the
These-
public to know because that's all we see.
Yes.
And then we're like, look at that, look what they did.
Yeah, it
But-
takes a few years, and you'll start seeing the little seedlings popping
Yeah.
up there. But
yeah, we've got areas that are 5 years old that we've planted. They're 5 years old, and we've already got trees that are 10 feet tall. You know, and large
Okay,
and
good.
stuff. And so it depends on your site too. I mean, your south slopes you're not gonna get as fast, but your north slopes, like what you're seeing behind Mullen and stuff, we'll have those replanted within 2 years, and within 5 years you'll start seeing nice green trees up there, and so that's a good thing. One thing Barry didn't mention is Shoshone County, we're looking at what, 11,000 acres of conservation,
11447.
and then overall between in Idaho it'll be an additional about
85 total.
85,000.
And I think that it may be a little more for the public is you guys are actually tree farmers in a way. It's a big farming operation because you're regrowing and maybe you can explain that a little bit how, because I know some of the public kind of look at the hillsides and, well, why'd they do that? Well, there is a lot of reasons, and you're actually farmers
Right.
for the tree, so maybe.
Yeah, you probably notice as you drive the interstate, you see where all the white pine was planted, and now there's a lot of dead trees showing up in that.
Mhm.
They're kind of cycling out, and so what is ending up happening there is because of the disease and the trees being too thick, they're all starting to die out. So we've got some land in there, and we'll go in and we'll take those trees out, and we'll plant a different mix of species in there that's a little bit more conducive. One species that becomes susceptible to insects or disease can end up wiping out an entire forest. And so we'll put in a mix of species, but it takes about, call it 45 to 50 years to grow from a seedling to a merchantable tree. And so that's the farming aspect of it is we'll just kind of work around through our 165,000 acres, and we'll do cutting for forest health, and we do some conversion, which is a clear cut, because that's the best thing to do for the site. And then we'll start that over again right away, as Britt says. And so we're tree farmers is what we are. Yeah. But all those logs go to a mill, and so there's employment and carbon sequestration and all the good benefits that come out of that.
It's a renewable resource.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think, just looking around here, we need that in our Forest Service lands. It's just been,
Yes.
the better practices, they should follow suit, and I think they are.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting, the 1910 burn, I mean, those timber stands were just, kind of beautiful for a long time. Now you're starting to see the disease, and trees are dying, and so there's quite a workload to get our forests healthy again. And that requires, in most cases, cutting some trees once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they're up at Shoshone Park. They're going to have to take some nice big trees out of there because of the root rot. And so I know the public looks at it as one way, but it becomes a danger to the public when they're left.
Right. Yeah.
And then they
absolutely.
can pass that off to other trees and actually ruin the whole forest, like you said.
Yeah, and we get used to kind of looking at our viewscapes, right? I mean, looking at how beautiful the timber stands are, but they're dynamic, and they're growing, and they go through stages, and then they die, and then fire can burn them. So what we as foresters do is we kind of mimic nature, and we try to take care of those forests before that becomes a problem, and keep them young and keep them thrifty and growing. So that's what we do as foresters.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, a lot of information that the people don't know. The cycle of what's happening. They just assume.
Yeah, wildfires are getting to be a bigger and bigger issue. I mean, this area, as you're well aware, had its dose of wildfire back in 1910. We're getting at a point again where, that risk is there. And so it's really important to be able to treat our fuels, manage these timber stands to the best of our ability, and not let Mother Nature just have her way. There's just too many people out there, as you well know.
Yeah.
It's just a disaster waiting to happen, and it kind of scares us to death.
Now you do all the fire mitigation, everything on your lands.
Yes. Yep. We're responsible for everything that happens on our timberlands.
Basically, that is the stuff within this program. It does not change.
Yeah.
And kudos to USDA for recognizing that with the Forest Legacy program, is
Yes.
they really acknowledge the value of private timberlands and the way they're managed. So
Yep.
it really is like a farm.
It is. And so the two things that I would just call out, there's probably more than two, but the two main things are that the lands can't be developed. They have to stay as working forests, number one. And the second thing is that they offer free public access. So those are the two benefits that really the public will get to see. Is it's not growing, condominiums. It's growing trees.
No, like it's supposed to.
Yes.
I appreciate that. You have any questions, Commissioner
No.
Cassidy?
No, I
You
think
guys
it's
have
great.
anything else? Any questions for us or?
Well, maybe a little bit about process. So we've already put the Montana application into Forest Legacy. Montana lands actually were ranked about a month ago, and the Stimson project received the #1 rank nationally. So that's the first phase of this 3-state effort. Idaho is in process now, and so we're here and with other groups such as yourself, explaining what we're doing and hoping that you will support our project. We'd love to have a letter of support from you if possible. Tyler happened to bring one along.
Okay.
If you'd like to look at it, and we'd love to have your support.
Just kind of a template, and
Okay.
feel free. I can send a Word copy if you want to modify it or.
Our grant applications are competitive nationwide.
Yeah.
And that's why we do everything we can to get robust support. And,
Okay.
So we send the application
Talked
back to
about it.
Washington DC, and it gets ranked
It's ranked.
each year. And so, like the Prairie said, it's 50 states, and they get ranked, and like Montana got #1,
Okay.
and then once you're ranked, then we start the process. You want to go through the steps? Or
Yeah, it's just,
discuss it?
there's a number of steps. We do a baseline survey, and the baseline survey, basically, a contractor goes out and he documents everything as it is today. So if there is a power line or there's a road, public road that goes through, those basically get grandfathered. I mean, they're a form of development, right? But they get grandfathered in because they're existing. So there's no issues with past development. It's just future development that it looks at. And then there's also a mineral survey that is done, and then properties get appraised, which determines what the conservation easement value is. And then at the end of that process, once you go all the way through it, probably in a couple of years, right, Eric?
Yep.
It'll take several years for this to get in place.
Okay.
Then the easement will be recorded, and it gets recorded in each county where we own land. So
Okay.
there'll be a recorded document for Shoshone County.
Okay.
So we actually write a stewardship plan,
Mhm.
and that's essentially how you're going to manage that property, indefinite. And so it's you're right. Okay, this is how we're going to manage it. It's kind of geared around the forest practice rules too.
Mhm.
For stream protection, wildlife protection, and then IDL, Idaho Department of Lands, is the holder of the easement, and so
Okay.
they review annually what we do. And so each year we'll send them maps or whatever and say this is what we're going to do on our lands. And then throughout the year, they'll kind of monitor what we're doing. And then at the end of the year, they show us a report. Yes, you did everything you said you were going to do. And so they're the holder of the easement when it's all said and done.
Okay. I see.
Yes.
So okay.
Go ahead.
Kind of like what they do now with timber management. They're
Yes.
kind of the go-to Okay.
So they'll hold the easement in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also important to note that we are third-party forest certified. So forest certification basically is a very robust process that comes in and reviews our practices and determines if they're environmentally sound. And so we have people looking over our shoulder with audits quite regularly. So to make you feel good about the foresters that are out taking care of the land behind your house, we're third-party certified.
We appreciate that. That's I'm not that our forests are an important part of our area here, and we're mostly national forests, and so they've talked about doing the I-90 corridor fire mitigation with the Forest Service.
Yes.
I think you guys were there at that, and so it's going to be interesting the next 10 years.
It will be interesting for sure. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
much
we're involved
needed.
with a lot of those projects too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, that's one of the things is you guys are already doing a lot of the hoops that the state wants you to jump through. They're already doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a competitive advantage. I think it's why our applications have done well, but hope we can keep that going.
Now, do you have any other forest lands other than Stimson's that you're working on? Up
So-
in Idaho?
So we're working on one that is in Idaho and Washington, which is Inland Empire Paper Company around Mount Spokane.
Okay.
We're working on one there, which sounds like we just found out last week we got some funding for that. So, yes, and we have previous. Now I wasn't project manager on them, but there's other ones in Idaho that Stimson has done as well.
Okay. So you've done it with other counties and other.
We have.
Okay.
We've got two relatively large areas. One that we call Flagstone Meadows, which is in the southern tip of Bonner County.
Okay.
And then we have another one at MacArthur Lake, which is just near Naples, south of Bonner's Ferry. And then the one that Britt mentioned earlier, International Selkirk, we're in the process of closing on that easement, hopefully this year.
Okay.
essentially all our lands up north will be under easement after that. So essentially north of Sandpoint up in that area, all land holdings we got up there will be under conservation. So that's great.
Yeah, that is great. It's good for the public. I really appreciate it. Do you have any further questions?
No, for the letter of support, you need that for fairly soon,
So
Yeah.
we can mid-May on that one.
Mid-May.
or? Okay, well, let's make sure. Just want to get it to you on time for
So
whatever you
I'd
need.
like to say like the 10th.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll probably have it sooner.
Yeah, what we have to do is get it under another meeting because this meeting isn't an action item. So
Sure,
we'll put it
gotcha.
on another meeting and
Perfect.
run that through.
I can provide. I got kind of a summary sheet breaking down what we
Okay.
talked about today. That way, if you guys want to reference
On your
that, you
side,
can.
And you put it on your website or wherever you need it.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
I, like I said, I heard this. I think it was one of the Idaho Timber meetings.
Oh, probably.
last year
Yeah.
in Coeur d'Alene, and I thought it was really interesting that this is.
There's been a lot more cooperation over the last 5-10 years across the agencies and so forth. It seems to be bringing some benefits. So.
Yep, for sure.
Do you have this information on your website?
Because it's not ranked yet, we do not.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not trying to get ahead of ourselves here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dot the i's and cross the t's.
Right.
With the MacArthur Lake and the Flagstone are on there.
They're on there.
And so if they wanted to find a map and want to go visit it, it's there. So.
Okay.
Flagstone is really neat because we have 3 kiosk areas, and so you pull in there and then you get out and you have to sign out a little piece of paper that says you're in there and you have to have the pass. But it provides a lot of walking, recreating, snowshoeing, mountain biking. A lot of hunters come in there.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
Yeah, we're running about between 1,100 and 1,200 people in there a year for
Okay.
access,
Wow.
coming in and using it. Actually, quite a few out-of-staters, which is surprised.
Mhm.
Mostly falls between August through November gets the heaviest activity. It's probably 60% of the activity that goes on. But
That's a bit of huckleberry picking.
Huckleberry, right now, a lot of horn hunters.
Yeah.
Shed horn hunters are in there right now. So, but yeah, it gets really heavy use. It's been a good program.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you guys coming, and this is pretty exciting. Exciting
Yes.
news. I'm excited to see this. People are, like you said, your investors or whoever could sell this for a lot more, but you want to keep it in the timber industry, and I think that's really neat. I think it is.
Yeah, I've worked for the company for 33 years, and it's been fun to watch the avenue they're taking, and they are in it for the long run on keeping it timberland.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you all for having us.
Appreciate your
Yes,
time.
thanks for the education.
I'll adjourn the meeting.
Tyler.